Hello and most welcome to 1761 of the Heidegger series. We will today continue where we left off in 1758 with captivating pictures and liberating language by Stephen G. Affeldt. And we are presently at page 269. Last time we looked at what are these pictures? What are they about? Are they empty as Baker suggests? Or do they have a content that can mislead us? Often the metaphor of the old man with a stick going up the hill comes up. And it is to make us realize that if we don't have concepts, words, or you could call it a prior, we might as well think it's an old man sliding down a hill. Pictures by themselves are simply not enough. And to that can Baker's understanding be added. They are not enough, neither are they necessary. But very often pictures accompany words. And I think that is a very important distinction. They accompany. There is resemblance, I would say, that with family resemblance. In family resemblance, they all belong to the same family, but they do not necessarily, listen now, necessarily share traits. They can, but it's not necessary. It could be an uncle that married into the family or a brother-in-law. Or why not one of those kids that's so common today that comes with a new marriage after you've been divorced or widowed. Family resemblance instead of identity. And the same connection or similar is between picture and the concept. I think maybe the most important realization is that the picture simply is not enough. What could we add? We could add context, most definitely a word, concept, word, intention. What you want with a situation. I think there is an abundance of different possibilities here. And all of them should be taken into consideration. So, to make this extra clear, there is no attack on picture, There's no attack even of the idea that pictures alone can be telling. It is just a pointing out that everything is more complex. Those things that we previously thought do exist, but there are much more. And the relations are far from as simple as we previously thought. This is something that is specifically pointed out by David Egan, and it is that there are some people who misunderstand Wittgenstein to be a sort of attack of dualism or Cartesianism. It is not the other side. It's not a contradictory or opposite to Cartesianism or any other ism. It shows more to the complexities that are much more advanced, and that the relations, rather than just this oversimplification of causality, exist. It is adding the massive intelligence of Wittgenstein to the picture. I continue my read. It's the second paragraph on page 269. And the last sentences should be written in gold. And the picture does not of itself tell how it is being used. A Martian would understand the old man with a stick going up the hill in a different way. It's oddly similar, don't you think, to the Ava Gardner-Ozma problem, where an alien civilization is to understand chirality, or how something is twisted, left or right. It needs to be shown as well, and the shown can be compared to the doing, the wording, the concept. But if the power of a picture to convey sense depends upon our understanding how it is being used, and so how it is to be taken, a picture will not successfully explain our understanding of a word. For exactly what requires explanation is our ability to understand how a word is being used and how it is to be taken. These considerations are more or less familiar. However, Wittgenstein's need to enter a reminder that the sense of a picture depends upon how the picture is being used takes me to the second, or perhaps somewhat less familiar idea that I want to isolate about how we imagine pictures to work and about why we might wish to understand language as operating according to this conception of pictures. And already we have a cite. Marvelous quote. At paragraph 523, Wittgenstein remarks, I should like to say what a picture tells me is itself. That is, it's telling me something consists in its own structure, in its own lines and colors. To imagine that a picture tells me itself and that its telling consists in its own structure is to imagine that a picture carries its own meaning. More specifically, it is to imagine that a picture may mean entirely apart from any connection with its being used by anyone on a specific occasion, to mean one thing rather than another. However, Wittgenstein wants us to see that this is an illusion. I would take the liberty, since Kelly came in a bit later, to reread the whole small paragraph. It's very important, that's the reason. At paragraph 523, Wittgenstein remarks, I should like to say what a picture tells me is itself. That is, it's telling me something consists in its own structure, in its own lines and colors. To imagine that a picture tells me itself and that its telling consists in its own structure is to imagine that a picture carries its own meaning. More specifically, it is to imagine that a picture may mean entirely apart from any connection with its being used by anyone on a specific occasion to mean one thing rather than another. However, Wittgenstein wants us to see that this is an illusion. Wittgenstein's first example of an actual picture, quite early in philosophical investigations, is the following. Imagine a picture representing a boxer in a particular stance. Now this picture can be used to tell someone how he should stand, should hold himself, or how he should not hold himself, or how a particular man did stand in such and such place, and so on. One might, using the language of chemistry, call this picture a proposition radical. This will be how Frege thought of the assumption. Initially, these remarks may seem to allow that a picture may clearly represent or mean, apart from our understanding, the use to which the picture is being put. While simply urging that it will not be clear what we are to do with the picture until we understand the specific purpose for which it is being introduced. However, the fact that Wittgenstein introduces this example in the context of criticizing Frege's understanding of an assertion shows that his point in this example lies deeper. Wittgenstein's criticism of Frege's understanding of assertion focuses on the idea that an assertion consists in two actions, entertaining a thought and asserting the thought. In challenging this idea, Wittgenstein remarks, but that such and such is the case is not a sentence in our language. So far, it is not a move in the language game. This may seem an especially poor criticism of Frege. For Frege's idea might itself be expressed by saying that a thought, or what he calls an assumption, is not yet a move in the language game. It is for him the assertion of the thought or denying of the thought or the questioning of the thought and the like, which makes a move in the language game. Frege's concern is to argue that in order for an assertion, denial, question, and so on, to make a determinate move in the language game, and in order to make sense of the idea that one and the same thought is asserted, denied, or questioned, the thought must have a determinate sense, which is specifiable apart from the assertion, denial, or question. However, it is precisely this Fregean idea that there can be a merely entertained thought or assumption which determinate sense apart from the assertion that Wittgenstein is criticizing. His argument, boldly stated, is that there is only a thought with determinate sense in making a move in the language game. Only insofar as words are either used or may be understood as being used by a specific person on a specific occasion for a specific purpose. Wittgenstein is not arguing that apart from these conditions, the individual words are without meaning. The individual words will mean what a dictionary says they mean. His argument is that apart from these conditions, the words do not express any determinate thought. In order for the words to express a determinate thought, one must be able to understand what someone is or may be saying with them. Could we go up a bit? And for that, they must be tied, at least in imagination, to a particular person and to his or her circumstances and purposes. Faced with a group of words, one may well be able to imagine a wide range of circumstances in which and purposes for which an individual might assert them. In imagining each of these circumstances, and purposes, one will make of the words a thought with a determinate sense. However, in itself, the group of words does not constitute a determinate thought. Indeed, it simply does not constitute a thought at all. For an indeterminate thought is not a thought, not a thought. In the context of this argument, it is clear that the point of Wittgenstein's remarks concerning the picture of the boxer is the following. The picture is having a determinate sense. It's representing anything in particular is inextricably bound together with the use of the picture for a particular purpose. Apart from its use, there simply is no determinate sense of the picture. The pictures picturing anything in particular at all depends upon its use. Insofar as it seems otherwise, this is simply because we have, in imagination, supplied the picture with a use. As Wittgenstein remarks at paragraph 291, the picture in itself simply portrays how a thing looks, what it is like. In itself, as Wittgenstein goes on to say in the same passage, the picture is idle. One might say, as Wittgenstein says, of the ultimately illusory, unasserted thought at paragraph 22. that it does not serve to tell me anything. It does not serve to tell me anything because it is not being used by anyone to say anything. Or rather, apart from its employment by someone to say something in particular, there's no determinate it to do any telling. Or language games and the conditions of speech. I have been suggesting that Wittgenstein frequently invokes examples of pictures in the context of discussing language, in significant part because a picture can seem to represent the realization of at least one dimension of our wishes for or fantasies of propositions and language. A picture, that is, can seem a bearer of clear and immediate sense, a vehicle which carries meaning clearly and unproblematically. And it can seem to represent such a vehicle because it seems to carry its meaning entirely within itself. To apprehend a picture, it can seem just is to grasp its meaning, to see its meaning. In challenging this picture of pictures, Wittgenstein does not undertake to show that pictures cannot clearly convey sense, but rather that their doing so is dependent upon our appreciation of the use to which a picture is being put. Accordingly, this challenge forms an integral part of Wittgenstein's larger effort throughout the investigations to illustrate that and how meaning in language is tied to our use of words, to the human activity of speaking language, or to what he calls making a move in the language game. We can now see, therefore, that for Wittgenstein, our insistent drive in paragraphs 113 to 14 toward a fantasy of language as operating according to a particular conception of pictures reveals a wish for the possibility of meaning in language apart from the necessities of use and purified of any connection to individual persons, circumstances, or purposes. It reveals a wish for the possibility of meaning in language apart from the necessities involved in making a move in a language game. But this is so far quite abstract and schematic. In order to understand more fully what, for Wittgenstein, is ultimately at issue in our drive to understand language as operating according to a particular conception of pictures, reveals a wish for the possibility of meaning in language apart from the necessities of use and purified of any connection to individual persons, circumstances, or purposes. It reveals a wish for the possibility of meaning in language apart from the necessities involved in making a move in a language game. But this is so far quite abstract and schematic in order to understand more fully what for Wittgenstein is ultimately at issue in our drive to understand language as operating according to our conception of pictures. We need a more specific account of what I have called the necessities involved in making a move in a language game. First, however, I want to make two preliminary points about the effort to understand what is involved in making a move in a language game. At paragraph 23, Wittgenstein remarks that the term language game is meant to bring into prominence the fact that the speaking of language is part of an activity or of a form of life. In linking the idea of language game with the idea of form of life, as well as in more narrowly contesting specific attempts to understand engaging in a language game as simply a function of the use of particular words or in terms of appeal to an ultimately mysterious mental act of meaning. In the preceding paragraphs 19 to 21 and elsewhere, Wittgenstein is suggesting that it is a mistake to attempt to specify any set of necessary and sufficient conditions upon making a move in a language game. Such an attempt would be tantamount to an effort to offer a general philosophical explanation of how meaning is possible and of how language works. But Wittgenstein works throughout the investigations to show that there is no sense to such an effort, for no wholly general question about how meaning is possible, which such an effort would seek to answer, can be given sense. The effort to offer a wholly general explanation of how meaning is possible, or how language works, only seems necessary or to have sense on the basis of a prior severing of the connection between our uses of language and our form of life. And once that connection has been severed, no question about meaning or explanation of meaning, even anything in particular, can have sense. Further, and this is the second preliminary point that I want to make, in linking the idea of language game with the idea of form of life. Wittgenstein makes clear that there will be real difficulties in understanding what is involved in making a move in a language game. For understanding this matter will be inseparable from understanding the entire form of life within which language game take shape, and which they themselves both shape and express. Accordingly, my concern here is simply to say enough about what is involved in making a move in a language game, about how making a move in a language game is bound together with conditions of our lives as speakers and actors, to bring into focus a couple of specific and, to my mind, insufficiently appreciated aspects of this idea. I think this is an excellent spot to put a point to this. So let's go look for some quotes, some sites. We can go back to the beginning page. So there was some indication, I would say, maybe the first real indication of the picture. So I mentioned earlier that could be likened to some men in a darkened out room touching an elephant. And they all grab the point. I'd say in this, we are grabbing quite a big part of it. A clear hint we will get today, or we've gotten. And I think that's an excellent move. And it begins almost directly. The fourth paragraph, the paragraph gets quite small here at page 269. At paragraph 523, Wittgenstein remarks, I should like to say what a picture tells me is itself, that is, it's telling me something consists in its own structures, in its own lines and colors. And then he clears out, as usually, the structure of the sentences and the paragraphs in later Wittgenstein are crisscross and convoluted. They always seem to be saying something different in the beginning to make absolutely clear what he is saying. I think that is a very grand method for clarification that could be used in other circumstances as well. This is actually quite apart from his interesting philosophical remarks. More specifically is to imagine that a picture may mean entirely apart from any connection with its being used by anyone. On a specific occasion, to mean one thing rather than another. However, Wittgenstein wants us to see this is an illusion. We go to page 270, first paragraph. And here we go into thinking, which is deeply connected. And thinking itself is just like the duck rabbit. It doesn't have a content or has a determinate move. To make it extra clear in the beginning, there is no move, but then there is a move, the assertion of the thought or the denying of the thought or the questioning of the thought and the like, which makes a move in the language game. That was 8 lines down. So the thought in itself, I wouldn't say it's like a picture, but it's still not decided. It doesn't have a decisive direction. It hasn't moved still. And we hear in his criticism of the Fregean idea, as the next paragraph, paragraph number 2 on page 270. However, it is precisely this Fregean idea that there can be merely entertained thought or assumption with a determinate sense, apart from the assertion that Wittgenstein is criticizing. So this is the very idea of determinate thought without participatory power or part in the language game. And to clarify, and I think that's quite important, there is a sentence about 7 lines down. Wittgenstein is not arguing that apart from these conditions, the individual words are without a meaning. They have a meaning, but the move is not done until they come into a relation. Everything is interrelated here. Everything is connected. The picture doesn't mean anything by itself, or at least it has a clearly ambiguous meaning. Together with the word, the concept, the context, the intention, something takes shapes or shape. That is the move. In that, everything happens. The last sentence of that paragraph, if we go up a bit, please, Kalle. So it starts with indeed. Indeed, yeah, it's the last sentence there. Yeah, perfect. The last sentence. Indeed, it simply does not constitute a thought at all, for an indeterminate thought is not a thought. And then comes the specification. It is not a thought. And that is tricky. It is some sort of thinking, but it's not a singular, decisive, moved thing. That is a thought. And it's shocking how close this is to modern neurology, where there has been a concisive and clear revision is the proper word, a clear revision of the idea of certain thoughts, that to be absolutely clear from the beginning, without hesitation. Now we think they are more like a foundational, soft ground of thinking, where nothing is determinate, but we still build up this storage of thinking, and it helps our actions. This is very close to Lisa Bartett-Fieldman, where she showed that emotions are sort of proto-plans or archaic plans. They all serve a purpose, although the purpose is not determinate, which is also a great advantage. She calls these things emotions. They have a purpose, but it is not as directed as actions and thoughts, a thought. We go over to the next page. And in the second paragraph, we have it. To apprehend a picture it can seem, just is to grasp its meaning, to see its meaning. And here, in the next paragraph, in challenging this picture of pictures, so it's not being challenged what I just said, Wittgenstein does not undertake to show that pictures cannot clearly convey sense, but rather that their doing so is dependent upon our appreciation of the use to which a picture is being put. So the picture, and now we get a clearer shape of the elephant in the room, and that is the part of the picture is that the picture is unambiguous. It's clear. Everyone can understand the meaning of a picture. Despite context, despite who we are, if we are all Swedish and so on. So the picture is going to be unambiguous with few exceptions. This is challenged by Wittgenstein. If we go to the last page we read, 272, the second paragraph. And we are talking about making a move in language. And here Wittgenstein explains, for understanding this matter will be inseparable from understanding the entire form of life within which language games take shape and which they themselves both shape and express. Accordingly, my concern here is simply to say enough about what is involved in making a move in a language game, about how making a move in a language game is bound together with conditions in our lives as speakers and actors, to bring into focus a couple of specific and, to my mind, insufficiently appreciated aspects of this idea. So we have Carlo Rovelli, relational quantum physics. We have the point that was made by scientists Aspect, Zeilinger, and Clauser, who won the Nobel Prize, received on the 10th of December last year, where they questioned and made local realism impossible and pointed to everything needs to be taken into consideration. Something cannot separately be having meaning or come to existence. Utmost, it is dependent on everything else, nothing being outside of it. So now we got a really good first look at the picture. Kalle, most welcome.
Thank you. Let's go to the previous page, 271. Here somewhere, let me see if I can find it. The picture is called idol. Do you pronounce it like that, idol? 271, yes. Do you pronounce it idol in English?
Come again.
Do you pronounce it like that?
Try to speak a bit lower. Idol.
Yeah, the picture is idol. So we can use this picture. It's not only a, let's say, a drawing or a painting, but it's also a picture in our heads. We could reformulate this and say a picture is passive. So picture, drawing, painting, it is passive. And and Einstein said that imagination is, it was alpha and omega for him.
Oh yeah.
But this was still, so to say.
Definitely, yeah, I see what you mean. Well, yeah.
But let's say it's not that Wittgenstein is criticizing imagination or pictures in your head. It's only that they don't have a meaning in language game. They are not moves. Say that Michelangelo had an image in his head of the Sistine Chapel ceiling, but he never made it a reality. Then it wouldn't be a move.
No,
so the picture
it's exactly, yeah, very good.
So picture is idle, it's passive. And let me use the example of Schrödinger's cat. So here you have set up, so you have the cat in the box. Cat done live. But this is the setup. Nothing has really happened. This is passive thinking, so to say. The picture in his head is idle. So he needs to take the move that is open. In this move, he sees that then the superposition, and so you have the move that you see the cat. Let's say that the cat is alive. Okay, then you have seen the cat is alive. The cat is happy, and then you perhaps second move could be that you give a hug to the cat, or it's dead, there is a second move, there is a funeral or so forth. But having only having this in your head without opening the box, it's empty concepts. It's not empty, but you need imagination. It's not that Wittgenstein is downplaying imagination. You need it, absolutely, but it's not a move, so to say, in the language.
No, it needs the context of an intention, a happening, the opening of the box, your intention to open the box, the air which is outside the box, and the cat.
The setup of the game, so to say. The setup of the game.
Yeah.
Indeed, that's the setup of the game. And this is interesting what he says. Let me also look at where he mentions the dictionary. We are speaking much about this. Let me see, was it this or the next one? Let me see. No, it was actually the first. Okay, so Wittgenstein is not arguing that apart from these conditions, the individual words are without meaning.
Yes, very important point, I would say. Very important point there.
So we could say, what is meaning? Yes, we could also use here the word idle or passive. So the words that the dictionary gives give the passive meaning of the words, so to say. Because they don't express any determined thought, they need this move in landscape. You need a user that actually uses them actively. So this is what we have said in the past. The explicit and implicit meanings. The dictionary only says the explicit meanings, but we look on this argument from a different angle, namely that yes, words do have meaning, but it's only the passive meaning, so to say.
Yeah, I think a comparison you can make, you think of a toolbox, and inside the toolbox you have wrenches, you have screwdrivers, you have hammers, you have nail, you have glue. We've taken this many times. They all have a purpose, but they don't get a meaning or a move until they're taken out of the toolbox and put to use.
Absolutely. This paper gave new insights today.
Yes, for me too, Kalle. We got the first glimpse of the picture, and the picture is, I repeat again, the picture is that the picture tells itself. It's not a criticism of the picture, rather the opposite. It's a celebration of the picture. To realize the picture is participatory in everything else. Nothing is outside. And I don't know the exact quote of the Nobel Prize winner, Alan S. Beck, but he said something to the likeness, everything in the universe, all its history and all its future is participating even in the smallest movement of a small finger. So, good point to end, I think, maybe, Kalle, what do you say?
Yes, let's end there. Hans.
I say thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kalle Lundahl, for participating and your excellent comments. And thanks, everyone, for listening in this rather momentous moment when we got the first glimpse of the picture. Hooray. Thank you very much, Stephen Affeldt. Excellent article. Have a very pleasant morning, day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Bye-bye, and thank you.